You're not. I'm not sensing you're angry. You're just you're disappointed.
Yes, very disappointed.
You're disappointed that
I'm very writers.
They've taken a story that had good bones to it, and they've taken all the bones out and said, "Here's a pile of meat." You know what I mean? All right, everybody, welcome to Nerds of a Certain Vintage. As always, I'm Patrick.
And I'm Andy.
And we're nerds who are here for our podcast proper, Sunday, January 29th. That's the final episode of January.
That's right. Normally we would do a ramble on a fifth Sunday of the month, but we skipped it so we could do some reading because we wanted to do a media club. We've been watching Mayfair Witches.
Right.
And
Rice's Mayfair Witches.
And Rice's Mayfair Witches, actually. Yes. And we were both independently watching it going,
something's off.
I don't remember any of this. I don't know what is going on here. Like, I remember there being a house. I remember New Orleans. I remember the hot girl. I don't remember anything else, really. So
yeah, I remembered Lasher.
Well, of course, yeah, you remember Lasher. But
the details, and so if we're sitting here watching this show, how much can we complain about it being Anne Rice's Mayfair Witches?
Nerd of a certain vintage's version of Anne Rice's Mayfair Witches.
We can't. I felt bad about talking down to the show when I'm like, this could be spot on for all I know.
So we decided to read the book and do it for our media club. And
some of the book.
Yeah, because it's too much to read in a single week.
It's 800 pages.
Yes, it's a thick-ass book. Yeah. So tell me, how far did you get?
I got into chapter 4, so I'm about 112 something pages in. So I'm about an eighth of the way.
Okay, I'm 33% in.
All right. So let's go through the book. The first chapter is on the doctor. You can follow through after this. The second chapter is about the priest. Mm-hmm. The third chapter is about Mike.
Yeah. No, the second chapter is
Mike, and then the priest.
And the third chapter. Michael Curry is a huge, major part of the book, completely written out of the series.
He's not completely written out.
He is.
It's just they've merged
Cyprian
him into Cyprian.
Cyprian
is not the same power as Mike did.
It's absurd. It doesn't make any sense.
What are you talking about?
And I don't. And once again,
later in the series, Mike actually joins the Talamasca.
And I get that, but why would you bring that to the front? You've missed the entire introduction of the character and the. I don't understand.
You're just a Mike stan. You just like Mike. I
liked the original story, which this is not. That's the thing. Yeah. Yeah.
And then the fourth chapter is Rowan.
And I told my wife I was not going to get riled up about it. This is the sort of thing that would rile me up, and I am so primed to get riled up, and I'm not going. I'm just not going to
get riled up.
I'm probably going to get riled up. Yeah. Hashtag Andy's apology. He's going to start calling people stupid and suggesting that they don't know what the hell they're doing. I'm going to try very hard not to do that. That's just me.
All right. Yeah. So I've gotten to the chapter on Rowan, and she's not even introduced by name until she's alluded to throughout.
Right.
But she's not introduced by name until 10% of the book is gone.
Yes.
I'm 85 pages in, and that's where chapter 4 starts.
And this is one of the first things that I don't like about the series. This is Rowan's a main character, but it's the Mayfair Witches. This isn't this isn't called Rowan Mayfair. This is called the Mayfair Witches. And the first 4...
Anne Rice's Rowan Mayfair.
That would probably be a better title. The first 4 chapters are I just
They're
love...
setting up characters.
I love the way it unfolds because it creates that mystery.
Yeah.
And they just dispense with that in the show. They're like, what mystery? We don't need it. Here's Lasher right away. Here he is. He talks. He's a villain. He's into it. He's doing everything.
Slightly creepy.
Yeah. He actually he's a spirit that has sex with people.
Yes.
Like I'm just like, what?
Yeah.
This is Anne Rice's Mayfair Witches, like Velma is Anne Rice's Scooby-Doo. Exactly the same.
The one thing I will say is that it has been a long time since I read this book.
Right.
But this woman knows how to write a story.
I know.
It's a little bit overwhelming sometimes how in love she is with architecture and telling the story of the places. But man, she sucks you right in.
A lot of what is kind of represents the Mayfair Witches is that house.
Of course,
and that place, the Garden District of New Orleans. And so I think that's why she does that. I think that's why she creates a character like Michael Curry, who is a restoration expert and in love with architecture, is because I think she wanted to,
until his accident.
Well, I haven't gotten far enough in the book, but I imagine that this is all leading to the fact that he's there to restore that beautiful house that has fallen into disrepair because they're afraid to do anything with it because they're afraid Lasher will get upset and just destroy things. Like I was going to tell you when we watched the 4th episode, I'm like, having read the book, this is just sad. I like this. Watching the show makes me sad. I'm like, I don't even know what they're doing here. None of this has anything to do with the book, really. And to me, it was like incredibly cliched. And I was just like, now I feel bad because I thought of this. I'm like, I'm mansplaining to a female showrunner, a show about women. And clearly she's trying to make a statement or whatever.
You're telling a different story. I mean, it's
entirely different.
But I mean, I think we can handle that when it's like telling when they change things in Rings of Power, but can we though?
What's really telling to me is I watched the little blurb after the show where the showrunner talks about it, and she talked about in this last episode what they decided to put in Cyprian's apartment to show what kind of character he was. And I was like, you just wrote it's like you wrote a whole new story. You're like, oh, Anne Rice's Mayfair Witches. Yeah. I tell you what, we'll have a witch and we'll name her Mayfair, and the rest will be different. But that's what we're going to do. And I'm just like,
we want the Talamasca. We got to have that.
Sort of. I mean, once again, they wrote out Aaron Leitner.
Yeah,
who's a fantastic character who draws out people's stories. He's really the one who causes that exposition, and they jettisoned him too.
He could be one of those guys who's like,
see, you got me riled up. Nicely done. You didn't have to do anything. I do it to myself. I get it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not that precious about the story, so I don't really care if they change it that much.
Well,
I'm trying to enjoy the story on its own merits.
I'd say the original story is like having a beignet, and the TV show is like having a ho-ho. I mean, at best. Because, once again...
So you're not enjoying the show on its own merits? Like, just as its own thing?
As I watch it, yeah. I mean, as I watch it, I'm kind of like... invariably, there's some comparison to the book. And it's not helping that I am reading the book now. But I do have some memory of the book. And as we watch, I'm like, I don't remember any of this. Like the whole flashback scene with the woman whose mother, the midwife, gets gored by a boar and dies. And now they're having a Wiccan ceremony in the woods. I'm like, this wasn't a Wiccan book. This was a straight a woman calling down a devil or a spirit to do her bidding book. This wasn't a Wiccan thing.
In this book, as far as I can tell, what is written in the book, it's like they had some ancestors who lived in like Haiti or something like that, and that's where it kind of started.
Now that's where I am in the book right now. This is the story of Lasher, and in all honesty, I feel like the book can be fairly well represented in a TV show without maximum changes. As I told you, I thought one of the things I like about the book is how they're introducing Lasher as a mystery. Like, you're not sure. People see him.
Yeah, they think he's a ghost or
something,
or just it's a very fast visitor.
Right. Well, yeah,
ducks around the corner. Lasher hiding behind a bush.
Right. In the very first or second in the second chapter, Michael.
Is Lasher Batman?
Does he have plans within plans?
He disappears very quickly.
I think he does. Well, I would have liked to seen that. I would have liked to have seen that horror element drawn out where you don't really get a good look at him for the first, I don't know, maybe the first 6 episodes. Which, if you kind of follow the story of the book, and through exposition and through meeting these characters and through flashbacks, very much in a Lost kind of style, all of these sort of rumors and these storylines were brought out.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: in the TV show, Deirdre is entirely complicit with Lasher.
Right.
But in the book, she's not at all. Like, she runs away from him as well, like the rest of them have.
Yeah.
Lasher keeps like doing things at the convent schools
Right,
like bringing her flowers and stuff. And
she's got this purse that,
right,
always has the same money in it.
Yeah, and she and the other girls there always say, yeah, the flowers just floated down, and the sisters are all like, you're liars, you're telling the truth, you're fibbing, and they kick her out of the school. So she ends up going to another private school. And Rita May is her best friend at this private school and sees her with a tall, pale, handsome young man who calls her his beloved, which Rita thinks is very romantic.
And that's just weird.
Right. So
but she at that point, she's probably 12 or 13 years old, right? And
exactly.
It's weird.
Once again, it's not... But once again, this is my thing. Deidre's not complicit in any of this. Like, yeah, she's being kind of romanced by the spirit, and she ultimately gets kicked out because they think she's sneaking a boy into the school.
Well, she kind of is. I'm seeing all the flaws that you're pointing out. I mean, I think I just don't have as much of an issue with the show. In terms of it being different from the books. My issues with the show are that it's just kind of boring. As a show, it's kind of boring.
Well, that's what I mean, is that they lack any kind of subtlety. I think if you had created it as the mystery that it's sort of represented in the book, you would hold people's interest. You don't have to have big set pieces where people get their throat cut. You don't have to have, like big gory murder scenes. You don't have to have that. If you just sort of have this character that you never get a good look at, and nobody knows what he is, and there's all these rumors floating around, and you just get to hear the stories, the exposition, I think especially people who haven't read the book,
right,
or who have read the book so long ago they don't remember anything about it, would be like, oh yeah, like if we would, having read it, would be like, oh, that's Lasher, that's the ghost. Right. We wouldn't realize really what he was because I didn't really remember myself. But that's how he's sort of represented as, and there's just something inherently creepy about that. That would, I think, would hold your interest. Yeah. But they didn't do that. They immediately introduced him. They immediately made him a speaking character. Right. And they immediately made him a villain. And in the book, he's not yet a villain. Not really.
Right. I mean, I'm not seeing him as a villain. It's like he's trying to make the witches happy, right? So that they keep him around.
Well, that's a representation in the book, is that he's just a dumb spirit, and he has too much power, but he doesn't really know what he's doing. Yeah. And there's all of these kind of things where people sort of represent the rumors about the Mayfairs and about there's discussions of Deidre like going crazy and shattering all the glass in these 12-foot windows. Now, you and I both know that's Lasher, and I feel like that creates that element of like we're in on the secret.
And that's a strength of the book because she's having a different narrator in each of the chapters so far. Right. And so you get this. It's not
it's secondhand. They've misunderstood what they've seen.
And they're not omniscient narrators, so you're not hearing all of the story. You're hearing their perception of the story, and it's putting together the mystery box.
And in all honesty, I think that would have been a better sort of construction for the show. Is if you had Aaron Leitner of the Talamasca. He has this power that not until the 4th or 5th chapter do you realize, you suspect. People talk to him way too easy. He has this comforting presence, and you're like, this dude's got he's got the whammy. He's putting the mojo on people. Yeah. And you don't find out till later chapters. Spoiler for you, but yeah, he does. He puts the mojo on.
No. I have that power.
Yes, I've heard that about you. That's why you're a slut.
There's no mystery in the show in terms of. Is Lasher it's clear Lasher is some being of some sort,
right? Well, no, it's not even any mystery about what kind of being he is. There's even a scene where he's like, "I'm a demon, take me as I am." I'm like, okay, and when I watched it, I was fine with that, and I was like, that's the set piece, that's the big effects piece, but I was already kind of like. I kind of remember in the book that it wasn't that obvious. Like they didn't really represent it so unsubtly, you know.
Well, it's clear that they've changed that. I don't know the reasoning behind what they may have.
No, of course not. I'm super nerd podcasting and speculating as to why they would do such things.
Well, I can guess one reason.
Please enlighten me.
They have Alexandra Daddario as an actress. Who they've hung this whole thing on. She is the face of this story.
See me being discouraged and upset.
No, do you disagree that she is the face of how they sold this? This was.
Yeah, but once again, that's what makes me that's what bothers me. You should sell it on the story, not on the actor's star power.
But that's not the way Hollywood works. Sometimes they need to make sure that people are like engaged in this.
I'm going to disagree with you just because they call it Anne Rice's Mayfair Witches. They're selling a known commodity. They're selling an established brand, and it's one that has a huge fan base. So why would you just say, "Oh, you know what? We're going to take this fan base." And we're going to take a shit on it and sell it on this one actress.
I'm not quite sure how huge a fan base there is or was before they announced this. I would love to go and look at how, like, what were the sales of Anne Rice's Mayfair Witches or the Mayfair Chronicles or whatever it's called. How did those sell in the 5 years before this show was?
No, I wouldn't even talk about it. I said go back to when they came out during the period when Anne Rice was huge. That
was almost 30 years ago.
So what?
Yeah, those people read those books back then, and we're among those people.
Right.
We barely remember the details of that.
I remember being a big fan of it.
I remember being a big fan now.
So there you go.
And what they're saying is we'll hook into that. We'll bring new people in.
This is a conversation we've had multiple times, and we're never going to agree on it.
Right,
I'm one of those people who says if you are going to take a known property and hang that name on it and say, I am going to take this property and make it and tell that story in a different media, and then you completely change it, it's like shitting on all the fans who came in looking for a representation of the property that it's represented to be. It's false advertising. It's a lie. It's not Anne Rice's Mayfair Witches.
Yeah, but I'm not saying this is Anne Rice's Mayfair Witches.
You're just saying that it's fine, and I'm saying it's a terrible thing to do.
I'm saying it's fine to change the story. That's it. I'm not saying this show is fine. I'm bored with this show.
Right.
I'm not trying to defend this show, but I'm not trying to tear it apart because it's telling a different story. I'm saying it's telling whatever story it is telling.
Well, I'll put
boring.
It was.
But this is one of the reasons we're joking about Anne Rice's.
Yeah.
It's becoming our shorthand for a shitty adaptation of something that does it poorly.
And almost has nothing to do with the original to some degree. But anyway,
we live in the golden age of Anne Rice's adaptations. We've got Anne Rice's Interview with the Vampire.
It makes me so sad. It makes me so sad.
I can.
Well, this is the thing, and this is the thing too. Is there's a series of books, and I would like them to make a good adaptation so that they could then make the second book and then the third book. But in all honesty, if they make another season of this, I don't know what it will be because this has so little to do with the original thing that once they get into the next story, I mean. As you said, Michael Curry joins the Talamasca. Well, there is no Michael Curry, and he's already part of the Talamasca. So whatever story that was, fuck that. I mean, that's not happening. What are they going to do? I don't know. Once again, when you take a property like this and then you're just, I'm going to change it so much that I'm just going to rewrite the second book and just.
Have you read anything about you say you watch the afterwards with the people?
Just a couple. I can barely stand to watch it because I watch them and I'm like, what is she talking about?
Is she trying to convey herself as being we're trying to stick with
it's clear
source material?
No, it's clear if you watch it that she could give absolutely two shits about the source material. Like in the first one or the second one, she talked about how great the scene was where Deirdre's throat is cut and how cinematic it was with her dying in the elevator. And I'm like, what is that?
Yeah, it's a set piece.
I know.
It would be great as a writer to write that kind of a scene and be like, there's the mystery. She opens the door, she gets to see her mother, there's an emotional thing, and then her mother's throat opens. That's I can understand her point of this is so dramatic, but it makes no sense in terms of if you're looking for Anne Rice's Mayfair Witches, it doesn't make any sense.
So,
well, clearly it seems like it was done with some sort of a special power.
No, she was just killed.
No, but there was something that was done because Cyprian couldn't read any history from the
right.
elevator.
Somebody, yeah.
So there was some sort of a power involved.
Right. So clearly, the Talamasca had her murdered.
Yes, I'm 100%
Super nerd podcast prediction right here. Not in the book, but in the TV show, the Talamasca is a bunch of evil, like Davos type villains, and they've murdered her. Yes.
It's S.H.I.E.L.D. being taken over by...
Perhaps they're going to capture Rowan, put her in a sealed chamber, and try and capture Lasher so that they can dissect him and learn his powers.
Yes.
That's what I think is going to happen. We've already written a better show. Well, but I'm kind of hopeful that as I read the book, that a lot of the stuff they did in the show potentially makes more sense. It doesn't seem like it would. My Super Nerd podcast sense says no fucking way.
I'm just hoping that the show gets more interesting.
I think this whoever
I don't like Rowan in this show. Like, I do not like her as a character.
No, I don't either.
I don't mind a woman who is like sexual and enjoying life, but she just seems promiscuous and broken.
Well, this is there's a romance element to the book, a big romance element. As
soon as you meet Rowan for the first time, she's talking about how dreamy this guy was that she saved on the boat.
Right.
Like, he's my kind of man.
And here's the thing. I like the guy playing Cyprian just fine. There is no chemistry there at all. Not even a little bit. Yeah. So I'm just like, what? But
that's hard to do when you've got Alexandra Daddario there. Like, that's like, she's a sexy, sexy woman.
Right. Well, you'll see in the next episode. The dress they put her in for the funeral, not terribly
flattering.
Not flattering at all.
Yeah.
She's for the first time I realized she's a long torso girl. Okay, so here's my list. In Rowan, promiscuous.
Right.
In the show, she is just promiscuous. There's no explanation for it. In the book, it seems to be more about the power that she knows that she has. Now, in the TV show, she kills the head surgeon, and then she kills the tech asshole. And in the book, she kills the kid, and they tell her that it was just a thing. It's not her fault, and she believes him. But then there's another instance where she is attacked by a man who tries to rape her, and she causes a stroke in him as well. At that point, she's pretty sure she's the one doing it.
All right.
And so, at that point, it can be inferred, and it's not necessarily specifically said in the book, that she picks these types of men for two reasons. Number one, she's afraid of hurting anyone, and she feels like heroic.
She feels like they won't hurt her.
Right.
Yeah.
She wouldn't have any reason to do this to them, and she's not creating any kind of a relationship because she's afraid if they ever do have a fight.
Tipso Schnein brew.
There you go. If she has that, she will hurt them, and so there's an explanation for the promiscuity. That she is separating herself from humanity because she knows she has power. There's none of that in the... That subtlety is absolutely lost in the show.
And the timing doesn't even work out. She seems like a kind of a shitty person in the show. She's promiscuous beforehand, before she hurts any of the people.
Right.
And doesn't seem overly worried about who she's willing to have sex with. And listen, I am not a prude. Like, women can have sex whatever they want. It doesn't matter. But the idea that she's just like, it seems like she is having sex in the show because she is broken.
Right. Like, there's no explanation for things. I don't know if they're trying to represent her as empowered because she just screws whoever she wants to. That's not how it comes across at all. And in all honesty, I've never considered promiscuity as a sign of empowerment.
She's got people who clearly care for her. Right. That the bartender clearly cares for her.
Right, and they represent him as almost a character, but he's not a character, and he's not in the book at all. So where he came from, I don't know.
I think it was just to show how flippant she was about this guy's
sex or something.
This guy's saying that he really loves me. Well, I hope you find love someday.
It won't be with me because I'm broken. I don't know why.
Get off my boat.
It's sort of like Christmas magic. I don't get it. I'm just sort of broken.
Get off my boat.
Okay, so the priest has a major role, but not in this. They completely write out the environment of the Irish community and the Catholic community, which is big in the book.
Mike, though.
No. That's the priest. That's the environment that the Mayfairs live in. The Mayfairs go to those churches.
Oh,
they talk
okay,
about
yeah.
the
Germans and the Irish.
They talk about
yeah.
the German and the Irish, and a lot lot of what Michael Curry talks about is that environment.
Yeah,
those
what he
Irish
grew up
and
in.
German communities back in the day, these immigrant communities. Anyway, in the book, Deidre got pregnant at school by a professor, and Lasher killed the father in a car accident.
Yeah,
she didn't.
Not by Patrick at the party,
who got immediately murdered and taken
Yeah.
out in a body bag.
Yeah.
And this brings me to the second one. Uncle Cortland, not involved in any of this shit. It implicated that Lasher pushed him down a stairwell when he was 80, well before all this shit went down. So he's not the villain he's represented in the show.
Yeah.
I don't know why they're making him a villain in the show. I don't know what that is all about. There's an implication that in the show that Deidre was drugged and is being drugged to keep her and Lasher apart. But there is in the book, it seems more like his interference in her life drove her crazy, and she ultimately ended up having a mental break, and they're keeping her sedated for her own health. Yeah. It's not really represented that they're trying to keep them apart. And here's the thing. In the book, she's not complicit in all this. In the show, she is absolutely complicit in all this shit that goes down. So that's entirely different. There's nothing similar about that. In all honesty, I have to say, I think that actress is Annabelle Gish.
Yeah.
Those contacts they put on her to make her eyes try to look like Alexandra Daddario are just freakish. They just freak me out. They look like she's blind. They look like she has cataracts.
Right.
I'm like, why
You're
don't
doing
you
that because genetics? You're trying to show that she
get an actress that has blue eyes, man?
You can't just Alexandra Daddario's eyes are different. Like they are a different.
Then
breed,
you should not have picked her to be the actress. Because once again, here's the other thing: how is Rowan described in the book?
I don't remember.
Tall, slim, blonde.
But still,
blonde.
People
blonde.
change. People change.
Shoulder length, tousled hair, blonde. Not Alexandra Daddario. Yes, blue eyes, like crazy blue eyes. Yes,
sure. But having Deidre, whether she's complicit or not, that doesn't really bother me either. What bothers me is that, like, when I look at the show, I don't have anyone to root for. Like, nobody is like Cyprian is just kind of like you introduce this guy as a stalker, like who's just, I'm here to protect you, but like the idea that she would all of a sudden be like, all right, tell me the story, rather than be like, you're a freak, you're a creep, and you've got pictures of me on your phone. Like, no, this is not how people actually react to these kinds of situations. You don't follow that guy to his apartment and have him say, stay here, while you look in his drawers and see nothing but gloves.
Right.
That is weird. Right. Like, a real person would be like, this is fucking weird.
Yeah.
I need to get out of this place as soon as possible.
But once again, she's already murdered 3 people with her mind. So she's not really not in Crazy Town.
I thought it was 2.
Well, you talked about the girl she killed when she was in middle, like.
I did. Well, I don't know. I got the sense that the girl survived.
And not in the book, she didn't. She died from that.
Wow.
So.
I maybe
you'll find the salt. You may be less right about that. Maybe, of course not, Pat. That's ridiculous. Why would you even assume you were less right about something like that?
It would be less right of me to assume that I'm less right.
Once again, it's not the story represented in the book, and I'm not sure why you would. I'm always going to be stuck on that. Like you have good source material, and then you're not going to interpret it or even try to represent it as it is. You're just going to do whatever the fuck you want to. In which case,
the question, and again, it's difficult for me to make final judgments about a show when it's still in progress,
right?
Unless it's Velma. Then we're perfectly.
We're just going to judge it right up front. We're not going to give it any more chance. One episode, done.
But like, I could see this, like the redemption arc, like her getting her shit together, getting control, like figuring out how to deal with Lasher, and like learning about her power, her background, her history, all of that stuff. I could see that as an interesting story. But the problem is that you, as a watcher, as a viewer of that story, you want to root for her to improve. And so far, she has shown no good judgment Like, she goes and takes a drink from somebody random in New Orleans, a town she's never been to before, and just drinks it and is like, whoop-de-doo, like, let's go and have a party, like, you know, and passes out in an alley.
It seems fairly self-destructive.
Yeah, and she's like, there's nothing that I watch and say, I'm really hoping that Rowan, like, she seems like a good kid. Like,
she's a real heroic character. Yeah.
I'm really rooting for her. She's like, you just, if you want to tell the redemption arc,
right,
then you have to want the person to be redeemed. And
so you have to be on their side, right?
Yeah,
they're not making her terribly sympathetic. I get it.
Yeah, she's not. There's just not a lot likable about her,
right,
as a character, and that's my biggest issue with the story is like, and the fact that they've sucked some of the mystery out of Lasher. Like, right. that would have been cool just in terms of the aesthetic of the show,
right? For
him not to be as like, it's a very Lasher forward show. There's a lot of
problematically so.
Yeah,
right.
And so, like, if they had told a redemption arc, you know, merge Michael with Cyprian, and that's that character. If they told a story of redemption for Rowan, and you could see her inherent goodness and see that she's really hoping to improve, but she doesn't. Like, she seems very selfish.
All of it.
Well, if I'd seen a little bit of that inherent goodness, then I'd be along for a ride where she's a mess to begin with, and Cyprian has his shit together, and like they get to the point where she's like getting control over things. That's the arc. That's a perfectly legitimate kind of story.
It is.
It's not Anne Rice's story. I agree with
clearly,
you. 100%.
Yeah.
It's not Anne Rice's story, but it would have been perfectly fine for me to have watched that story and been happy with it.
Don't you mean perfectly?
Sir, it would have been a perfectly serviceable story to tell. Yes.
Hey, please don't go off book, man. We're trying to create a brand here.
But that's the difference between me. You get caught up in
I'm very.
You're not. I'm not sensing you're angry. You're just. You're disappointed.
Yes, very disappointed.
You're disappointed
I'm very writers.
They've taken a story that had good bones to it, and they've taken all the bones out and said, "Here's a pile of meat." You know what I mean? I don't know how much more I can say about this show. I mean, I will tell you, I'm really enjoying the book. Like, I'm totally.
Yes.
Like, the woman can set a tone. She can set she can put you right into the setting.
Yep.
And I'm there for it.
I love the prose. I'm very into the characters. I love, once again, the way that she's kind of parsing out information through rumor. And I thought, you know, if they did this series that way, where they had like 6 episodes, where they had the doctor, then the priest, then Michael Curry, then the priest, then Rowan, and then 2 chapters where the 2 of them meet, and then he goes to New Orleans and meets the Tallahassee guy. Then you have like a mid-season break. Then you have another 6 episodes where you do all the flashback.
What you're saying makes for a more interesting way to tell this story visually.
Right.
But it also means that you wouldn't meet Alexandra Daddario until like the 4th episode, which is not why you're paying Alexandra Daddario.
You are so...
She's the way they sold this. Like, the teasers about this, the news that came out about this show was that Alexandra Daddario had been hired to be in Mayfair Witches.
Other than your love, Alexandra Daddario, she's not that big a deal. Like, I'm not going to watch a show just because Alexandra Daddario.
But there are plenty of people who would.
That's a small part of it. Then, once again, you're if you and I are going to have this discussion where you're like, oh, they're selling it on Alexandra Daddario, and I'm like, they're selling it on the fact that it's Anne Rice's Mayfair Witches. I got to say, I think I'm going to win this one. I think people watch the show because of the property that it's sold on, not because of the specific actress it was in, who is only marginally popular.
I understand what you're saying.
Right.
The issue I'm saying is that they've invested, like, as a studio. This is studio thinking. Mm-hmm. We've invested in this star. whether we think that she's hot or not, it doesn't matter. Whether she can sell this show or not, it doesn't matter. Somebody in the studio system that greenlit this show hired her, and that's what they're trying to sell it on. Here's the actions that have been taken throughout the sales of this show.
Do you think they paid more for Alexandra Daddario? They paid more for the Anne Rice catalog.
Well, no, I think that's a false connection, because of course they paid more for the Anne Rice's catalog, clearly, but somebody, when they were making decisions about how to, push out stories about this, what the teaser trailer would be like, what the trailers would look like, they are chock-a-block full of Alexandra Daddario. The news, the trailers, the teaser, everything starts with her. That's they're trying to hook people.
I think you're taking an endpoint thing and acting like that was the first thought process, and I don't think that's correct.
What would make
right?
I don't know if I'm coming across properly. Because my point is that when they were greenlighting this story, they probably greenlit it saying, we need to get someone in this show who is a recognizable name. And
we'll build it around there because and what you're saying is we'll build it around her because the story can't carry this property. Right? That would be the assumption if they are going to build it around an actual actress.
A lot of us are we're both making wild leaps of logic here.
Right.
I don't think that the story can't carry this story.
No, I'm not getting. I don't think that's what you're implying.
I'm thinking that someone in the studio was saying
it can't, and we need a big star to push this terrible story that nobody will be interested in.
We need a name.
No, and I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying that's clearly where the fuck up was.
Clearly, because if you base it on that kind of a thinking, then the name needs to be there from the beginning.
So let's
wait until 4 episodes in to introduce
exactly.
That
so
name.
The studio is like, let's jettison the whole story and rewrite it so that this actress that we're building this around and she's the selling point is in there from the start and is the big deal. And once again, you know how I feel about studio interference, and if you're assuming that this is why this is such a fucked up thing, then I can't disagree with you because it's just obviously an absolute mess. So
I think that both of us are seeing this. I think both of us are seeing the property as problematic. The show property as problematic for perhaps different reasons. And we're making guesses and all that about what the cause of that was. Whether it's just somebody who doesn't know the story well, or whether the studio was telling them, no, this is what you have to do. Push Rowan in as early as possible so that we can get.
I will say why I'm not necessarily on board with your thought process because AMC's never seemed to be that way. AMC's and other stories we watched the Discovery of Witches and we loved it, and it was very loyal to the source material. This doesn't seem to be a studio problem. Like they're going to be like, no. I'm sorry. No, Anne Rice's Mayfair Witches is not why people come to see Anne Rice's Mayfair Witches. Nobody wants to see Anne Rice's Mayfair Witches. They want to see Anne Rice's Mayfair Witches. I don't see AMC doing that. I see some writer being like, I can make this better by completely changing it. And guess what, writer? You can't.
Again, I'm making guesses based on why they wouldn't tell the story in a more epistolary kind of approach.
Right.
You can't. In my mind, I'm thinking all right, I agree with you. It would be great if we had the first episode about the doctor, the second episode about Michael, the third episode. But that's not the way the show was designed.
Right.
And so why wasn't it designed that way? And that's I'm trying to put myself into a mindset of what's the decision-making process for that?
Well,
and I can't see someone going to AMC and being like, I've got a better vision for this, and you just are along for the ride. Like, I'm going to tell this story, and we're going to just paste Anne Rice's name on it.
Right. No. Trust me, the studio is tacitly involved in the responsibility for this fuck up too. Yes, they're not off the hook, man. It's not like they just like signed it off and said, "Hey, we trust you. We don't know what the fuck you're going to do. Just go do it." That's not the way it was. But and I'm just like, I have a lot of respect for AMC from other properties they've done, and I'm like, what the fuck did you do here, man? Like,
well, do you think there's a problem with just adapting Anne Rice's stuff? Because these are two shows that changed dramatically from what were strong. Like, again, the bones were there.
It's the green agenda, man. It's the green agenda.
I'm asking you a legitimate question.
No. I am saying, like, once again, we talked about this in the interview with the vampire. If you're going to take a show,
don't you mean Anne Rice's interview with the vampire?
I'm sorry. I meant to say Anne Rice's Scooby Doo. I mean Interview with the Vampire. If you take a show that essentially revolved around a white, like 1790s plantation owner, and then you transport it to, 1920s New Orleans black, entrepreneur, clearly you're making a political statement. It's not about the literary quality of the work. You have transposed it here to make a political statement. And so if that's what happened with Interview with a Vampire, I can only assume that Mayfair Witches was also given to whatever writers would be allowed to make whatever political statement they wanted to. Now, the obvious choice would be empowerment of women and the evil domination of the male patriarchy would be the obvious assumption. And when you watch the head surgeon, who is an asshole, incompetent white man who gets a stroke, and then you find the tech god, who is an immoral, unethical white man who gets a stroke, you start to see a certain pattern here. You know what I mean? And there are the fact that they write out Michael Curry, who is a sympathetic 48-year-old white man. You start to get to the impression that this is the purpose of this. This is the political statement that wants to be made. It's being made very poorly. If it's about empowerment of women, it is absolutely like collapsing. It's not, once again, she's not a likable character.
Yeah.
If you're trying to empower her and show her the power, in all honesty, when I read the story, I think she's a very empowered character as it was. And I appreciate that you have Aaron Leitner, a white guy who is a sort of heroic, sympathetic character, and then you have Michael Curry, a white guy who is kind of a whiny little bitch, but is still something of a sympathetic character. The fact that you write them out, and then you write in Cyprian Greaves,
I don't know the last name,
who is still a whiny character. Once again, I feel
it's
like
they were trying to collapse both Leitner and Michael into one character.
No, not in any way.
That's how they made Cyprian.
No, not in any way. Cyprian has nothing of Aaron Leitner in it. Yes, Michael Curry, absolutely.
I'm talking more about, like, in terms of writing, instead of having two male characters, like, doing two different things, you just have one character who's in the Talamasca and has the powers. That's what I mean by in terms of, like, merging Leitner and Michael.
Wait till you watch the next episode. They introduce a character that is tacitly Aaron Leitner-like, but not really. Right. And once again, the Talamasca is not it's represented as almost like a CIA style military operation. Like it's nothing like it is in the book.
Right.
And I feel like they've lost the thread, and I just, once again,
that assumes that they ever had the thread to begin with. And again, I will go back to this, and I will be the first to say I have made a lot of assumptions about the reason why they've made choices based on nothing but watching a few trailers and reading some stories.
Yeah.
So I don't have any internal. I would love to, like, say an interview with I would love to see the writer or the showrunner of this show on Hot Ones. You know, where he's asking her really good questions and she's got her guard down to answer them.
No, this is the thing about Hot Ones is they ask some very deep, like, research questions, but they're still softballs. So they're not trying to get into anything heavy. And that's what you love about the show. You don't want them to get into anything heavy. I'm not even trying to get anything heavy now. I just feel like it's a legitimate comment to make, is that I want good writing. I want a good story. And like you said, this story has good bones. If you change it all because you're trying to make a political statement, I'm just not down with that. I appreciate what you're trying to do. There may be even some validity to your political statement, but I don't want you to fuck up a good story so that you can make a political statement. I don't want that. I'm not interested in watching that.
The difference between you and I, because I agree with you, but only in that I want you to tell a good story.
Right.
If the story you tell has a political statement included with it, and it's
still good,
then sure, do it.
No, I'm absolutely. Well, once again, I liked Interview with a Vampire. That one was a good story. Mm-hmm. It saved enough of the bones, even with all of the changes. And it made that political statement. And yeah, was it a little oppressive? Was it a little obvious? Yeah, but I didn't. It didn't mess up the story.
Well,
this is whatever. I don't know what they're doing here. I don't know what the statement is.
Well,
and
we're
if
also halfway.
Whatever they're doing, it's terrible.
We're also halfway through. Like this could end up being a show that I'm like, yeah, they did a decent job. Like hindsight is going to help. If we look at this after the 13th episode or whatever, well, like the story that they told did come together. It was not Anne Rice's Mayfair Witches, but it was a story.
You know me, I'm going to behave just like it was Game of Thrones, man. I'm just not. If there was any aspect of it that,
but you were just as negative, or you just as critical. You were just as critical of
negative or critical.
Well,
no, I was never this critical of Interview with the Vampire. Never. I was like, they changed. I was like, they changed a lot. The entire time we did that, I was like, they changed this, they changed that. I don't think it was a good idea that she changed it. I'm still enjoying the story. Didn't I always say that? I'm still enjoying it. I still like the show. I'm not saying that here. This is different. This show is bad.
All right.
Yeah.
So are you going to continue watching?
Yes, I am going to continue watching. And I'm going to be very hopeful that, yes, they dig themselves out of this pit. But I just don't see how
hopeful,
they do it.
But also
pessimistically hopeful, yeah.
Well, then what we need to do is we need to revisit this at the end of the season after we've finished reading the book, and just have a check-in. We don't necessarily have to do a full episode unless it's worthy of a full episode.
This is going to be shit for me to cut together because I sound like a fucking total douchebag in this. But
no, listen, we're trying to figure out why this show is not working,
right?
And I think at the end of this, we can both say that the show is not working for either of us. I think it's for different reasons.
Well, once again,
but not as far different as
you had mentioned. You had mentioned how good the production values are. Mm-hmm. Yes, they spent money on this. They have wonderful actors that I'm fans of, and this is entirely a writing problem. I don't understand what they're doing, and if they dig themselves out, I'm going to be like, that's a cliche, that's a trope, that's a stereotype, that doesn't work. If they dig themselves out story-wise, I'll be like, okay. But once again, with all of the actors and the various things, it's just bad. And even at the end of it, I'm going to be like, okay, maybe the story kind of came together. And once again, you haven't gotten to the part about the Mayfair Witches history, that shit that you've seen so far. Mm-hmm. It's not in there. Yeah. Once again, all that Wiccan stuff, that's like the ceremony in the woods.
That from like even just watching it, because I'm like, I don't remember them being in like Scotland or wherever this is.
No, they are in Scotland actually.
So
yeah. The first Mayfair is in Scotland, but no, she doesn't unless that young woman who was jacking some dude off in the woods, if she's the mother of the first Mayfair represented in the book, which is possible, then I don't know why you went back a step. It's not in the book, it's not represented, and there's no need for it, really. And I just, once again, I'm mystified. I'm like, I don't know what these people are doing with this. Anne Rice is spinning in her grave. I could fucking, like, grind coffee in her coffin right now about this Mayfair Witches shit. Like, I could have an espresso that is the most finely ground coffee that has ever existed based on this Mayfair Witches shit. I love
how passionate you get about this, man.
And whoever wrote that shit and put Anne Rice's name on it,
I'm just over here like, you're the bear, I'm poking.
Yeah.
I'm just poking at you.
I hope she's standing over you right now in your bed, man, going, what the fuck did you do, dude? I know, I'm a total dick.
You're not a total dick, you're just passionate about this stuff.
You think I'm nerds?
Hashtag Andy's apology, go back and see the companion. This is what happens. I told you it was going to happen. I apologized then.
Hey, you got to get your shit together.
This shit wired, man.
My shit is wired. It's never going to happen.
The worst,
I told my wife I was not going to get riled up. And here I'm getting so crazy riled up. Why are you making me so sad, man? You're just making me so sad. I feel like I'm going to burst into tears right now.
You know why?
This shit wired, man.
That's why. Man.
It's so schnein, bro.
Doinked doink.
Doinkity doink.
Wait, I meant to say that a different way. Doinked doink.
It does sound like something I would do.
Yeah.
This shit wired.
Sorry, this is going to be such a fun video to cut together because, man,
that thing is it's on loop again.
You can't stop it.
I can't stop
well, it's only because I got this shit wired. Man.
Don't stop. Never stop. Never stopping.
Yeah. Anyway,
I'm gonna slurp it up.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
I'm gonna cut this together because this is the most honest impression of me as I am.
I'm not sure this is the most honest impression of me. I'm not quite sure.
No, you
I'm
did
just over
fine.
here poking.
Yeah, you did fine. You defended your point. I was like, that is so bullshit, but.
Well, it may be. I don't know. Like I said, I have no I have no knowledge of what reasoning the studio would have.
If you love this show, I'm not going to like gainsay you the fact that it's the greatest show ever.
What have I said during this?
You clearly love the show.
This is the first time Andy's less right.
Here, I'm going to actually drink this. I've been holding it for like 20 minutes in my face, but.
All right, well, the dame has spoken, so it is time for us to wrap it up. As always, I have been Patrick.
And I have been Andy. And Pat loves this show.
Poking.
Pat loves it. Doink to doink.
It does sound like something I would do.
Is that something you would do?
It does sound like
maybe.
But
it does sound like something you would do. Nah.
But
maybe.
Maybe I do love this show. I don't know. Someone who loves this show would be a genius.
I snorted.
All right. Bye.
This is going to be so fun to cut together.
It's going to be like 15 minutes long.
Yeah. Exactly. Now, I tell you what, just as a gag, I'm going to cut in all of my shittiest points. I can't.
You guys are weird.